Welcome back to the channel. Here you'll find the fastest updates on breaking news, shocking secrets, and dramatic predictions for times. The young and the restless. Who will betray whom? What secrets are about to be revealed? And what horrific tragedy awaits the characters in Genoa City? Subscribe, turn on notifications, and join us to discover the unmissable developments right now.
Welcome back to our channel on this beautiful day where we dive deep into the emotional labyrinth and unfolding drama of Genoa City. The relentless, suffocating pressure of Genoa City's corporate and personal battlegrounds has left an indelible mark on the weary souls navigating its treacherous terrain. Amidst the sprawling, invisible wreckage of shattered legacies and fractured alliances, Kyle Abbott finds himself desperately seeking a fleeting moment of respite. Driven by a primal need to escape the suffocating confines of his office, he steps out into the bustling city streets, intending to grab a quick, solitary meal before plunging back into the chaotic abyss of his family's ongoing crises. His mind is a turbulent, swirling vortex of dark vengeance, protective fury, and the lingering, unhealed trauma of witnessing his family pushed to the absolute brink of destruction. Every step he takes is heavy with the burden of impending retaliation, his thoughts entirely consumed by the intricate, dangerous chess match against the formidable Newman Empire. It is within this fragile, solitary sanctuary of a local upscale dining establishment that Victor Newman observes the restless Abbott heir. Victoria, currently navigating her own agonizing labyrinth of moral compromises and deeply conflicted familial loyalties, recognizes the heavy toll the recent warfare has taken on Kyle. She is intimately aware of the sheer, unadulterated ruthlessness of her father's recent machinations, a reality that has left her questioning the very foundation of her family's legacy. Driven by a desperate, underlying yearning to halt the endless cycle of retaliatory destruction that threatens to consume them all, Victoria extends a diplomatic, carefully calculated invitation. She gestures for Kyle to join her at her table, offering an olive branch extended across the deeply entrenched enemy lines that have defined their families for generations. Kyle accepts the invitation, though his outward composure serves merely as a fragile, translucent mask over a boiling cauldron of deep-seated resentment and unresolved trauma. As he takes his seat across from the Newman heiress, the atmosphere crackles with unspoken grievances and historical animosity. Yet, in a rare, fleeting moment of shared humanity that briefly transcends their dynastic warfare, Kyle graciously acknowledges the recent, miraculous news circulating through the upper echelons of Genoa City. He expresses genuine, albeit guarded, relief upon hearing that Nikki Newman has successfully regained her sight, acknowledging the profound emotional victory this represents for the Newman matriarch after her terrifying descent into absolute darkness. Building upon this fragile foundation of civility, Kyle further offers a cautiously optimistic update regarding his own family's arduous journey toward healing. He confirms that his father, Jack Abbott, is making a steady, commendable physical recovery from the horrific, near-fatal stab wounds he recently endured. Moreover, Kyle acknowledges the profound, stabilizing comfort Jack has found in his emotional reunion with Diane Jenkins Abbott, a reconciliation that has served as a vital anchor amidst the swirling chaos of their lives. Victoria seizes upon this momentary warmth, utilizing the softening of Kyle's demeanor to carefully, methodically advocate for a comprehensive, sweeping ceasefire between their warring factions. Victoria's plea is deeply rooted in her own internal crisis of conscience. She is profoundly unsettled by the catastrophic human cost of her father's vendettas and desperately wishes to broker a peace that could save both their empires from mutual annihilation. She softly, yet urgently, pushes for a paradigm of forgiveness, urging Kyle to let the agonizing traumas of the past remain buried beneath the ashes of their conflict. However, her earnest diplomatic efforts shatter violently against the impenetrable, hardened wall of Kyle's psychological scarring. The mere suggestion of absolution triggers a visceral, uncontrollable reaction within the young Abbott, his mind instantly flooded with the agonizing, inescapable imagery of his father bleeding out on the floor and the terrifying, paralyzing vulnerability of his abducted mother at the hands of a sociopath. Kyle adamantly, fiercely, refuses to entertain the notion of peace, his rejection echoing with the absolute certainty of a man who has witnessed the darkest depths of human cruelty. He harbors an unyielding, deeply entrenched conviction that Victor Newman, the omnipotent puppet master of Genoa City, orchestrated the entire nightmarish ordeal from the shadows of his executive suite. For Kyle, the pain inflicted upon his parents is not a regrettable casualty of corporate warfare, but a deliberate, unforgivable act of malice. He flatly, uncompromisingly rejects Victoria's suggestion of forgiving or forgetting, making it abundantly clear that his thirst for righteous retribution remains unquenched, and that the Abbott family will not rest until the Newman patriarch is held entirely accountable for his suspected atrocities. Miles away from the tense diplomatic failure at the restaurant, the narrative shifts to the opulent, yet psychologically suffocating confines of the Newman ranch. Nikki Newman, having only recently emerged from the terrifying, isolating abyss of her temporary blindness, is acutely, painfully aware of the toxic psychological warfare that continues to permeate the very walls of her home. The restored vibrancy of her physical vision has only served to starkly highlight the dark, manipulative shadows cast by her husband's relentless, unforgiving vendettas. The sheer weight of Victor's ongoing machinations, coupled with the lingering emotional residue of her own trauma, has left the Newman matriarch feeling trapped within a gilded, highly volatile cage. Desperate to escape the suffocating, oppressive atmosphere of Genoa City and perhaps sever Victor, even temporarily, from his destructive corporate obsessions, Nikki formulates a plan born of emotional necessity. She approaches her formidable husband with a proposition that transcends mere leisure, proposing a romantic, extended escape to the timeless, aquatic serenity of Venice. This is not simply a request for a vacation. It is a calculated, desperate plea for geographical and psychological distance. Nikki hopes that by removing Victor from the immediate proximity of his battlegrounds, she might be able to reclaim the man she deeply loves from the ruthless, calculating corporate warlord he has increasingly become in recent weeks. In a surprising turn of events that belies his usual unyielding nature, the formidable patriarch actually acquiesces to his wife's heartfelt request. Victor, who is currently basking in the cold, calculated triumph of his devastating, highly sophisticated legal frame-up against Billy Abbott, momentarily softens under the earnest, pleading gaze of his wife. He agrees to the Venetian getaway, a rare, unexpected concession that underscores the complex, deeply flawed, yet undeniable devotion he harbors for Nikki. This decision to step away from the chessboard, even briefly, reveals a microscopic fracture in his otherwise impenetrable armor of ruthlessness, suggesting that his love for Nikki remains the singular force capable of altering his destructive trajectory. When Victoria subsequently arrives at the sprawling estate and learns of this impending European excursion, a profound, overwhelming sense of relief washes over her weary spirit. She views this upcoming trip not merely as a luxurious holiday for her parents, but as a vital, strategic pause in the relentless hostilities that have plagued their lives. For Victoria, Victor and Nikki's imminent departure represents a tangible, desperately needed glimmer of hope that the Newman war machine might finally power down. This development aligns perfectly with her desperate, albeit recently failed, attempts to broker a lasting peace with Kyle Abbott, providing her with a renewed sense of optimism that the devastating cycle of retaliation might actually be broken. Meanwhile, far removed from the opulent tension of the Newman estate, beneath the dappled golden sunlight of a serene park cafe, Jack Abbott and Diane Jenkins Abbott are delicately, painstakingly attempting to rebuild their shattered sense of security. The ambient, soothing sounds of the park stand in stark contrast to the lingering, icy specter of Dr. Lawrence Markham's psychological torture, a dark shadow that still haunts the periphery of their quiet, hard-won intimacy. They sit together, holding on to the fragile tranquility of the moment, desperate to reclaim the normalcy that was so violently ripped away from them during the harrowing ordeal of Diane's captivity and Jack's near-fatal assault. This delicate, restorative tranquility is abruptly, jarringly pierced by the sudden ringing of Jack's mobile phone. The caller ID reveals Detective James Burrow, a name that instantly alters the atmospheric pressure of the afternoon, replacing their fragile peace with a sudden spike of anxiety. As Jack answers the call and absorbs the detective's authoritative words, the tension in his posture is palpable. However, as the conversation progresses, an immense, overwhelming wave of profound relief visibly erases the deep, agonizing lines of worry that had been etched into his face for weeks. He ends the call with a heavy sigh, turning to Diane with eyes shining with unshed tears, his voice thick with raw emotion as he reveals that their long, terrifying nightmare has officially, finally come to an end. Jack meticulously, gently details the culmination of the relentless police manhunt, confirming to a breathless Diane that Dr. Lawrence Markham has been successfully apprehended. He explains that the authorities caught the disgraced sociopathic doctor completely off guard at the isolated summer house they had previously identified as his potential hideout. Jack further reassures his trembling partner that Patty Williams, the deeply disturbed, deranged instrument of Markham's cruelty, has been permanently transferred to a maximum security psychiatric facility to await her trial. He emphasizes, with unwavering certainty, that the monsters who tormented them are now securely caged, completely stripping away any lingering possibility of their escape or their ability to inflict further harm upon the Abbott family. Overwhelmed by the profound, dizzying relief of their mutual safety and the sudden evaporation of the immediate threat, Diane experiences a profound emotional release. The vulnerability of a woman who has survived unspeakable terror, rises to the surface, prompting her to make a desperate, tearful, impassioned plea to the man she loves. She begs Jack to abandon his consuming, dark thirst for vengeance against Victor Newman, the man they suspect of orchestrating the entire ordeal. Diane asks him to prioritize their love, their miraculous reunion, and their collective, desperate need for healing over a toxic, endless pursuit of retribution that will only plunge them back into the darkness they just escaped. Jack is instantly paralyzed by an agonizing, deeply entrenched internal conflict. The primal, fiercely protective urge to annihilate the man he holds responsible for his family's immense suffering wages a violent, silent war against his profound, unconditional love for the woman sitting before him. He is torn between the duty of a patriarch to avenge his family's honor and the desperate desire of a lover to provide a safe, peaceful haven for his partner. Ultimately, the bone-deep weariness of the endless generational feud and the raw, unadulterated vulnerability shining in Diane's tear-filled eyes conquer his simmering rage. Jack solemnly, heavily agrees to lay down his weapons, promising to pause his vendetta against Victor Newman in order to safeguard their fragile, newly reclaimed happiness. But this hard-won, delicate peace is destined to be tragically, violently short-lived. The tranquil, healing atmosphere of the Park Cafe is suddenly shattered by the aggressive, unannounced arrival of Kyle Abbott. Radiating a dark, restless, almost manic energy, Kyle storms into their quiet sanctuary, completely oblivious to the profound, life-altering, emotional shift that has just occurred between his parents. Consumed by an insatiable, burning thirst for vengeance and fiercely, unyieldingly determined to make the Newman patriarch pay in blood and reputation, Kyle immediately demands a strategic discussion. He insists, with terrifying intensity, on orchestrating a devastating, crippling counterattack against Victor Newman, entirely unaware that his father has just vowed to walk away from the battlefield. The ideological chasm between a war-weary patriarch desperate for healing and a traumatized son hungry for absolute destruction is suddenly, starkly laid bare, leaving the fate of the Abbott-Newman war hanging by a dangerous, frayed thread as the audience is left breathless, wondering if Jack will honor his sacred promise to Diane or succumb to the intoxicating, destructive pull of his son's righteous fury.